Hello and welcome to an episode of Beyond the Tigris. Today, our guest is Zahra Shah. Zahra Shah is a wonderful mother to a half Pakistani, half Iraqi child, and she's also a co founder and executive director of Iraqi Innovators. Today, in our episode, we're going to talk about the cultural aspects of Iraq, living in Iraq, being an Iraqi and living in the UK, and all the opportunities that we can have in both sides of the world. So I hope you enjoy this episode with us today. Let's go. Okay, cool. Okay, Zahra, thank you so much for accepting my invitation today and coming to the episode. I want to ask you, how did you find Iraq so far? Do you have the jet lag? Did you not go through that?
So thanks for having me. No, jet lag's not too bad. It's only a 2-hour difference.
Yeah.
So for me, the main thing is just trying to manage my son's timetable because he's 3 years old and making sure he's having his naps. But everything is upside down at the moment, especially with the heat.
I was just going to ask about that. How's the heat?
You know what? I was looking forward to coming in the heat.
I mean, why?
There's a weird thing in my family. All my siblings, except for one of my siblings, we all love the hot weather.
Yeah.
But also London weather is so unpredictable.
Okay.
So everyone's sick because we don't know how to dress. In one day you have sun and rain and thunder and we're all just sniffling away.
Yeah.
So at least here you know what you're getting and you know how to behave accordingly. You just stay indoors until 4 p.m. and then
I mean, it doesn't even get better after 4
Yeah,
p.m.
not much better.
It's like the same weather, so dry. Okay, how do you feel to be back in Iraq? When's the last time you were here? I think 3 years ago?
No, I was last year in March.
Last year in March, okay.
Yeah.
So what's the first thing that you notice is different in Iraq? Because I know it's been getting a lot of difference and it's developing. So,
massively. No, every time I come, even last year when I came, I was very shocked because last year I went to Erbil after 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is very different. Baghdad as well, very different. So many new developments, properties everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a few interesting projects like Baghdad Gate and all these things happening. And then again this year, just seeing them more progressed is really, really a great sign of the fact that the country is moving forward.
Yeah.
And there is investment now in these different industries and different sectors.
Yeah, and it's a bit shocking for me. I mean, we've been for a lot of years, just settled, not doing anything, and then suddenly in 2 years, everything is changing for the better.
Yeah.
It's I think this is amazing. Actually, I feel proud of it, and this is one of the reasons I started this podcast. So I wanted to ask you, when's the first time that you stepped your feet in Baghdad?
In Baghdad was, I believe, March 2018.
March 2018.
Yeah. So I stepped foot first time in the country in Erbil in August 2017.
You were working in Erbil, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I came to Baghdad March 2018. That was just, the reason I didn't come earlier was just because of visa stuff. Because I'd have to go back to London, get the visa from the embassy, and then re-enter through Baghdad and blah, blah, blah. So yeah. That was my first time, and I think my goal was a little bit of sightseeing, but mainly for ziyarah. So I went to Karbala, Najaf as well,
That's
and
beautiful.
did all of that. And my parents came, and I was with my husband, so that was our first little family ziyarah trip.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
And for how many years did you work in Erbil?
From 2017 to 2019.
Okay, interesting. You worked in Recoded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How was the experience there?
I loved working there. I really loved the students, the vibe. I liked living in Erbil. I had really good, I think people make a place for you.
Yeah.
So I had a really good circle around me of friends, and I loved my job. I really did.
I know you had similar experiences, work-related in Baghdad as well. Did you feel that sense of welcoming in Baghdad?
Yeah. Honestly, Baghdad is in my top 3 cities of the world.
Whoa, that's interesting. Is it because of your son?
No, it's because, this is before he was even born.
Okay.
I the vibe here is so it's very energetic, especially at night.
Lively,
right?
yeah.
It's very lively, but everyone's got their own personalities and their own sort of groups. Like you've got your bikers crew with the
Yeah.
tattoos, you've got the
Yeah.
hipsters, you've got
It's like there's no one identity. They're
Yeah.
all over the place.
it's like any cosmopolitan city. But I think also what really gives it that extra oomph is the history and heritage that people are very proud of, and you see it dotted around the city. And that's something
How do you
that,
see it exactly?
like like the Shahrazad, the
Oh yeah.
monument and things like that, and also just in the way people embed that identity in naming new things, like starting a new business, and they'll link it to something from Babylon. And
Yeah.
but we compare that to like New York. New York is a very new city.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that same
Cultural roots.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How do you think that affected the way people deal with with each other? Like,
In Baghdad,
yeah.
I think the challenge is Iraq is still a very new country, like most of the Swana region, and even Pakistan is a new country. I don't think the model of a country was meant for our regions. We were all one. We were like, this was Arabia.
Okay.
This was not Saudi, Kuwait, Iraq. So I think that is always going to be a conflict, maybe for the next 100 years. How do you manage? How do you manage your identity of like your tribe or your local community with the wider identity of being part of a country with a flag and a football team? And these are all very new concepts still.
Definitely.
So I think that can be that is an inner conflict people have that they don't realize they have.
Okay.
But then I guess in Iraq you have an added layer of that heritage of thousands of years ago with Babylon and all of that. That adds to maybe the confusion.
Yeah, definitely. There is confusion in the air. I mean, before we get into the identity thing, because this is a very broad topic, I want to ask you about your background. Have you ever lived in Pakistan, or you're just from there?
So I've never lived there.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind living there. I'd love to. But at this point, I actually know more about Iraq than I know about Pakistan in terms of geopolitics and all of that. I've never really spent more than 3 weeks, I'd say. And I haven't actually been in 7 years now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time to
It
say that
is.
you're from that country and not
Yeah.
experience it.
I know.
So you've been like you were born in the UK?
Yeah, born and raised in London.
Interesting.
Spent more time in Iraq than I have in Pakistan.
That's beautiful. We're proud to
Yeah.
have you.
Thank you. No, I think a big part of my, like, going back a little bit to the identity thing, I think what I've struggled with in terms of identity, when you live in the West, you're juggling two cultures. You've got your heritage culture, in my case Pakistani, but you're also trying to fit in with the British culture, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And you're always torn. So either when you grow up and you mature and you actually start to value your own culture more, because you realize, oh, you know what? Like we're not very individualistic. We're very family oriented, whereas in the West it's very individualistic.
Is it the case in Pakistan as well?
Pakistan is very similar to Iraqi culture, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, very
Interesting.
family oriented. We look after our parents when they're old. Our grandparents live with us, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's always been a struggle. But then an added layer of identity for me is my ancestors actually originate from Arabia and left to North India, the subcontinent at the time. About 500 years ago, they left Baghdad.
Okay.
And then they just stayed there. So
Okay.
and that became Pakistan, that area.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history behind my ancestry and like where all the different empires have fit into their story.
I understand.
But I think that's why I've always been connected to this region.
Yeah. How does that like reflect back to your son? How do you like enrich within him the cultural heritage, especially like he has an Iraqi father,
Yeah.
Pakistani mother, living in the UK, coming to Iraq, like he must
Yeah.
have some confusion.
He will, because we had it and we only had British and Pakistani, and he's got like an extra layer.
Extra layer.
I'm very conscious about this, and that's why I find it so important for him to have a connection and visit regularly. So he's been coming to Iraq since he was 4 months old. When he was 4 months, we lived in Basra for a month.
Okay.
And yeah, I come every year with him, make sure that he understands the culture and he's learning the language. The Pakistani side is also important, but not as important because obviously, like, you know, you go under your father's culture. But yeah, his Urdu is pretty good and his
That's really
Arabic
good.
is decent. So
And his English as well.
yeah,
That's
his English is
amazing.
the strongest. Like
Yeah.
if you speak to him in Urdu or Arabic, he'll respond in English.
Okay.
But he'll put random words in a sentence as well. He'll be like, "You're mukwayas."
Oh my god, that is super cute.
I'm like, Quayas isn't even Iraqi. But we spend a lot of time in Jordan, so he's just picked up these words.
That's really interesting. Wow, that is like a very diverse child.
Yes.
He has all the identities within him.
Yeah.
I know you're the co-founder or founder of
Yeah.
the Iraqi Innovator, and also the executive director. And we've worked together on a course, and it was amazing. Tell me more about why you started Iraqi Innovators in the first place.
I saw there was such bad media coverage of Iraq. It was always, and this is local and international, very focused on the politics and conflict. And we were working with entrepreneurs, and I was thinking, like, why is no one covering these guys? They're doing amazing stuff in very unique circumstances. So Iraqi Innovators began as a blog. I thought, all these experiences I'm having, let me write them out and put them out there, because my background was copywriting and editing as well. And so writing has always been a part of my DNA, I guess.
That's beautiful. You know, I've worked with you on a course on copywriting. I never knew you were a copywriter yourself.
Yeah, that's why I
That's
did it.
interesting.
Otherwise, I don't think I would have valued copywriting and invested in a cause.
Wow.
So yeah, I wanted to bring those stories to the masses and change the narrative around Iraq. And then that kind of built into doing trainings and stuff like that. And initially I thought, yeah, we'll be an NGO, but we'll be a brand that people feel ownership of. And that's why the name was chosen as well.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I am an Iraqi innovator. This is my place. And we really wanted to focus on bringing the students, involving them in all the decisions and making sure that they were a part of, like, the curriculum development and their feedback was heard.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, you've been through it with us.
Yeah.
But over time now, given how frustrating the NGO sector is, how morally corrupt it is, I just kind of want to stay away from it now.
That's
I think
very counterintuitive. So, like, think of NGOs as like corrupted, you know.
Yeah.
What's left for corporate, the corporate world?
Yeah.
I mean,
there is a lot of space now to be filled because the NGOs, the UN is pulling back out of Iraq, which I think is a great thing. But it's
why so?
Because a country cannot be built with foreign intervention. And at the end of the day, this is all foreign donor money with their own agendas. And this is a bunch of different organizations with different missions and different values. And they don't really understand Iraqi culture. They don't ever understand, they don't make an effort to understand cultures that they work in. They are just exporting their ideas and bringing them here. And I'm very against that.
Regardless of what the situation is and what the culture holds. I wanted to ask you, while we're talking on the identity thing, how would you describe the Iraqi youth identity, and if there is one? Because there's a lot of confusion, you know, and I think identity plays a huge role in what you said right now about, like, creating a country. And so maybe the problem is that we don't have an identity. Like, we don't feel like we belong somewhere that we will defend or, like, we will develop.
Right.
Do you see that?
I think that what I've noticed is a trend where people will associate themselves with the city they're from more than it being a country thing. And I've also noticed the same thing in Jordan. So when you ask someone, where are you from, they'll say Basra, Baghdad,
Okay.
And each city as well has its own culture and its own mindset and way of doing things. So that often gives people an indicator of, oh, you're from there, that means you're this. So you're like this.
Yeah.
The idea of Iraq, again, it's still a new concept. And I think probably when there's a football match or something like that,
There's like a cultural thing,
everything's
and everyone,
at stake.
yeah, and everyone loves their country now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately we are very community focused. And I've had this conversation with people in Jordan when I speak to like Bedouins in Jordan. They're like, we don't care about
You spoke
Jordan.
to a Bedouin. I spoke to a
Yeah.
Bedouin too in Jordan. It was
Yeah.
really interesting. How was your conversation with them?
He was like, at the end of the day, we're Quraysh or we're Hashimi. Like, we care about our tribe. We don't care about Jordan because this is all like meaningless to us. They only care about Jordan when it comes to political motives, I guess. Like,
Yeah, I remember when I had the conversation, he was like, he was describing the idea of being a free human, like far away from politics and the government. And so he described something really deep for me. And he was like, he said, the government gives you, like provides you with things, but it doesn't do it like for free. It's in return, it's asked for your freedom and like your flexibility of movement, maybe.
True.
So like they're against the idea of government overall, and so I can understand what they mean by saying like we care about the tribe. Yeah, it's really, you know, when you think of it, it's something that let's say not modern, not developed. Maybe a lot of people will not like take those ideas, but when you think of it, it's actually true.
It is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that thought. At the end of the day, we've been running like this for hundreds of years. Why should we change now, kind of thing? But it'll probably take hundreds of years for us to be okay, like to put the national identity before the local identity, I guess.
To adapt to it.
But yeah, I mean, Iraqi identity in particular has multiple layers because you've got the ancestral history of like all the empires, and then you've got this new Iraqi identity. So
what is the new Iraqi identity?
That's a tough question.
I'm sorry, I'm giving you a lot of tough questions.
The new identity is this nation statehood concept.
Okay.
This is, you know, what Iraq is like 80 years old or something, maybe 90, I don't know exact number. World War II, Ottoman Empire, you know, after that, right? All the countries are new. I don't know if I think people at the end of the day, yes, they know they're Iraqi and they are proud to be Iraqi. And in conversations, obviously when someone foreign asks where you're from, if you meet them in a different country, you'll say Iraq. You probably won't even say Basra or Baghdad. Some people do, but I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. And not literally. Just here, everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you find that Iraqi youth are influenced by the West?
Yes.
Yeah, in a good way or bad way?
I think the influence comes from... So firstly, the influence comes from, you know, like TV shows, movies. Hollywood has a great hold on the world in terms of how it portrays the West, and especially America. But I think I've seen people not only here in Gaza like learn amazing English from watching movies and TV shows. And
that could get them places.
Yeah. And even the accent. Like they've never left their city, but they know the accent of like the remotest part of the UK because they heard Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear.
Oh my God.
And I was like, did you go to the UK at some point? Like, how do you have this particular accent? He's like, no, just Top Gear.
Whoa, that's really fascinating.
I was amazed. You definitely like get some skills from it, and you learn the lingo and you learn like slang words and stuff. I don't think there's in terms of influence can vary because I think people on an individual level, it depends what your interests are. Like if you're a hipster, maybe you'll be more influenced by Western shows because there's not enough hipstery shows made in Iraq, you know, that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
I don't know if it's bad or good. I think it really depends on the person.
Yeah, talking about like the sectarian kind of thing where Iraq has is like someone would describe themselves from Baghdad or Basra rather than just saying Iraq. Do you find that in the UK? Like someone describing themselves from Manchester or something?
Yeah, I mean in the UK when you're talking to people, they will tell you which city they're from and which place they're from. And you can also pick it up from their accent. because even here everyone's accent, like
It's different.
Moslawi accent is different, so you will
there's an
tell.
accent,
Again, it depends who they're talking to. If they talk to someone, like in London, so many people work in London from around the UK. And if I ask them, oh, are you a Londoner or are you from somewhere else? Because often, again, the accent will give it away. They'll be like, no, I'm from Nottingham or I'm from Liverpool.
Okay, cool.
But obviously, if you talk to someone international, you will just say, I'm from the UK.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it depends.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. So how do you think, like, being in London, and I think you've worked there and you had a life there, how do you think that affected your cultural perception, or like how you integrate cultural integration in your workplace in Iraq? Like, does that even showed itself? Like, how did it affect you?
I think one of the things I kind of had to fight for in Erbil was building a prayer room. When we were designing a co-working space. Things like that, I think, come from your, identity, your practices, your beliefs, and catering it to the masses.
Okay.
In the UK, they're trying to, like, some companies are trying to be flexible in that way under the name of EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion.
Okay.
So, yeah, giving space for prayer, making sure there's halal food at events.
Okay.
There's social events that don't include alcohol, that kind of stuff. But here, I think it's much easier because generally people have a very similar culture.
Okay.
So you're not having to be too minute in the differences.
Yeah.
And also it depends which city or area you're working in, because then the majority is easy to cater to.
Definitely. What was the hardest thing that you experienced working with Iraqis in general? Is there something like common you can talk about? Like, for example, are they bad in teamwork? Let's say.
I think sometimes, like skills like that, maybe teamwork, writing skills, like professional writing skills, emails, that kind of thing. That's largely to do with it not being covered in the education system. So,
Is it covered in the UK?
So I remember in secondary school, high school, learning how to write formal letters and learning what language you should use, like your sincerely, your regards, that kind of stuff, when to use them.
Yeah, honestly, you're talking about that. Like, I think I've had to learn that as well. I struggled with that in my first job.
Really?
I was like, professional emails wasn't my thing. I mean, professionalism at all in like the workplace, I don't think it kind of exists in Iraq. It's kind of starting to exist, but like it's very different from the rest of the world. How did you find that?
I think my biggest struggle has been just like communication skills and sometimes a bit of work ethic, because people are very talented, very, very talented, but I think sometimes they don't realize the impact of their actions on the employer. Like, the employer is an afterthought. I've had situations where we've had team members just go missing for 2-3 weeks. And this hasn't happened just once.
Really?
This is why I'm saying
Whoa.
it. Just go missing. And I'm like, what happened?
Oh my God.
I'm thinking the worst.
Whoa.
And I'm like, all I need is a message to know you're okay. And so that I can
probably just
also,
didn't want to work.
I don't know what it was. And then in the end we found out, like, he had some family issues and stuff, which is totally fine. But all I need is one message.
Yeah.
Let me know,
But I think that reflects a bit of the tribal kind of culture thing. It's like people care more about their families or like their life in general, their personal life, more than their jobs. And I think I find that in Iraq.
I like that though. I like that part. But just send a message.
Yeah.
Just let people know.
That's really worrying to disappear.
Yeah. So that's the communication part. Literally, like, because then on an employer point of view, you've got all this work that needs doing and you've got that person to do it and they go missing.
Yeah.
You need to figure
That's
out.
That's not professional.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like the only thing I've experienced on a regular basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear that's on a regular basis. I've never heard of that,
Really?
Like, that's interesting, honestly. 3 weeks and I've gone missing. That's my dream. Maybe because I work in a multinational company. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Um, there's something that I am very eager to get into and to talk about, which is the Takat conference that happened in the UK, and I've been dying to go there. I tried to attend it over Instagram Live, but obviously it wasn't ideal because it was cutting and everything. But there's so much to ask you about that. How did you find it?
It was a really amazing conference in bringing Iraq to the UK and bringing so many of the startups, founders here, first time in London. So that exposure is great for them. Connecting them with the Iraqis in the UK for the first time, and giving the Iraqis in the UK hope, because one of the speeches was from Dr. Amina, and she said something really amazing. She was like, so the venue was next to the Houses of Parliament. She goes, 20 years ago in that building next to us, they were talking about the Iraq war and how they were going to come into Iraq. And now, alhamdulillah, we're talking about the rebuilding and all the initiatives happening and projects and startups.
Wonderful.
So it was a very interesting juxtaposition there of old and new and rebirth. So it was a really great chance for building those bridges with the UK, giving entrepreneurs here a chance to visit the UK because visas are so difficult to get.
Definitely.
And also the Iraqis in the UK had great feedback. All the attendees had great feedback saying, we didn't know all this stuff was happening. It's nice that we're hearing good stuff about Iraq, and it's not always about the negative things they see in the media, which we were talking about earlier. It was a really much needed conference, and I think we have to keep building on that momentum, and that's something with Iraqi innovators, which we're doing with smaller events.
Definitely.
Is having intimate gatherings, getting speakers from here, either on Zoom or in person, and covering different topics, and just sharing that, Iraq is kind of entering a new phase.
Okay. You mentioned something about making the Iraqi youth in the UK feel comfortable with Iraq, and listening to all the news. It's really interesting to me, and I want to know more. How do you think that diasporic youth in the UK, Iraqis mainly, can bring back to their communities? What is the sense that you got from this conference?
I think not just youth, I think Iraqis of all ages in the UK, a lot of them want to get involved. They do, they want to either start business here or invest in businesses here or buy property. There's still a few challenges in doing so, like legal infrastructure or bank transfers, stuff like that. But there's definitely an appetite among them. It's just a matter of how do we do it? Because maybe they haven't visited Iraq in a while, or they visit for a wedding and they leave. So they just need more data, more information.
More information, one of the speeches that I've heard, someone said that my mother always said, I don't have a son who doesn't visit back Iraq. Do you remember that? Were you there?
I must have been, but maybe I don't remember that exact
line. But it was really emotional because I think he was one of the best speakers there. I mean, they were all awesome, but he was really emotional, and he was very convincing people to get back to Iraq. I think he was a doctor or a surgeon.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
What is his name?
I won't remember the name.
But it was really emotional for me, and for a lot of it, we've talked about this before we started. The idea of we don't want to be here. We just want to be somewhere else where we have privileges, we have a good, nice life. But when we think of it, there is so much that Iraq can offer that we just disregard. And we look on the bright side of what's the Western... I mean, Europe is an amazing place, and people all over the world want to live there.
Yeah.
But do you think, they're disregarding kind of the good parts of Iraq, I feel like?
This is a big topic. So look, as far as, the grass is always greener on the other side,
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
When looking now at the UK, Europe, the West in general, it's not in a great place. The economy is bad. Everything's extremely expensive. even I don't think I'd want to raise my kids there, to be honest.
I've heard that from so many people.
Yeah.
That they don't want to raise their kids. Why so?
Yeah, it's just in terms of like activities and amenities, there's loads of stuff for kids to do, but this education system is rubbish. The agendas of the government
That's
are
very
then
counterintuitive.
pushed into. Yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, they're not trying to build geniuses. They're trying to make, like robots.
Okay.
They want everyone to be a robot and to work 9 to 5. And they're also trying to get more women back into the workplace because childcare is so expensive that women quit their jobs to do full-time, stay-at-home mum. And now they're offering childcare for free so that mums can go back to work.
Okay.
It's just such a mess. It's all a mess. And with like in the case of the UK with Brexit, we've lost so much talent.
How did you lose so much talent with Brexit?
Because of visas and staying. Like Brexit changed everyone's status, so they had to move back to their countries. The truth is, you will never, as a brown person, a black person, a foreigner, you will never be 100% accepted into these societies. That is the God honest truth. You will always face racism. Unless you're, in a really privileged position where you're a millionaire and whatever. But you will always face racism. You will always face prejudice because you will never ever belong there. So yes, it's great. Go live there for a few years. Study there. Get what you can. In terms of experience, but bring it back here and build.
Yeah.
Because the people here running some of the most successful businesses are the Iraqis who've come back.
Definitely.
That's
because
the trend.
They brought back their experiences.
Yeah. And I think that's the best way to do it now because, through colonization, the Brits did the same thing. They took our resources and went back and built their country.
Yeah.
So we're doing it through education, through knowledge, because they've used our resources to be at the level they are.
Definitely.
So I don't blame the youth here if they want to leave. Like, who am I to say don't leave? I'm also a person of privilege. I have a British passport. I can go as I want.
Yeah.
If anything, I'm hoping to move back to Iraq.
Oh my God. This is a big statement coming from a Pakistani. I mean, I've heard it from family members who live in the UK and were born there and basically like British Iraqi. They all are saying like they really don't want to raise their kids there. They really want to get back because of like all the corruption and everything.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think that's really going to affect the future of Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few of them move back already.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
They're like born and raised in London with
yeah.
kids and family, and they've moved back.
Yeah, and
it's very possible. Like now, I'm seeing loads of Iraqis from all over, even Jordan and all the countries, because they're seeing something here now. They're seeing the change.
there's change.
So it's
Definitely,
a really good.
there's change.
It's a really good time actually to stay in Iraq because this is like that pivotal moment where things are improving and you can maybe get a really good job at this point because of that growth.
Yeah.
Because more private sector companies are building and growing here and they need talent.
They do.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. How do you think maybe the challenges that Iraqis will encounter after they like all their life they've been living in the UK and they get back here? It's a tough culture. I'm not saying that Iraq is like becoming a good place and it's developing, but it is a tough place to live. It's not like easy.
Yeah, I think some of the challenges are just the little things. Like there, everything is contactless payment. There's no cash, which everything you just tap is all done. That's probably something people might struggle with, or the weather
and public transportation and traffic.
The traffic here is a pain for sure. I guess also just like the bureaucracy, getting paperwork done and stuff can be a bit challenging.
Yeah.
But these are not things that, for me at least, are a deal breaker. But
I've
maybe
had
they
people,
offer some.
I've heard people considering this as a deal breaker. Like they literally came here to do some government work and they said no more Iraq.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. Yeah.
If that's your only experience, then fair enough.
That's true. That is really true. Yeah, I mean Iraq can be like not welcoming as an infrastructure, although it's like they're building and it's becoming more beautiful now.
Yeah.
But I think the people are definitely welcoming.
you know what? Honestly, I think that's one of the main reasons why I've loved living here so much is the people.
Yeah.
Honestly, just so warm, so generous, so kind, so loving. And in London, by contrast, I remember once I was very sick on the tube, and I threw up on the tube. Like, I was really sick. I had food poisoning.
Whoa.
No one batted an eyelid.
Oh my God.
People didn't even look up from the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I was too graphic for the podcast,
Yeah.
Sorry, but I was really not well.
Yeah.
And I just was like, seriously, no one's even going to offer me a tissue or ask me if I'm okay.
Wow.
And I know here, I think I was cycling in Erbil, and my tire went flat, and like 5 people came to try and help me. One guy got a pump out of his boot. One guy was
That's
like,
the thing.
I'll blow it with my mouth. One guy was like...
That's the thing about Iraq. Like, if you are in trouble in the streets, you can guarantee that you're safe.
Yeah.
And it's so different from what the media portrays. Like,
Yeah.
in the media, it's the most dangerous country on earth.
Exactly.
And I'm sure every European or traveler or backpacker who came here were taking their precautions, insurance, and like really taking care of themselves. But like when you come here, you can walk at night safely as a woman, and nothing would happen.
Yeah.
And like it's a pretty safe place, and
Super safe.
realizing that for me was honestly shocking, because I was watching Instagram, and I think that's the most factor that influences us. And I was seeing all these women talk about how it's not safe walking in London at night, and how it's not safe walking in New York at night. And I was saying, like, wow, this is actually the safest country for me.
You
right
know,
now.
that's another reason with the kids and the safety side of it, raising kids there. Like in London, I mean, growing up in London, I've seen people get stabbed.
You've seen.
Yeah, it's very normal. Gang culture is very, prevalent. People carry knives, loads of drugs everywhere on the streets. I've had fights with drug dealers. Like, you have to have pretty thick skin, especially in East London. And it scares me. Like the other day, a 9-year-old boy was going to school and he was stabbed with a sword by some crazy guy.
Crazy.
And then also like the lack of justice, the lack of care from the government when things like this happen.
You know, like for us Iraqis, like when we hear that, it's so, like not what we thought of the UK, because we always say that the number one argument of parents with their children here is like, no, don't go out because we don't have laws and no one will protect you.
Yeah.
But like listening to that from a country
Well, we have
who
many
has
laws. They don't do
and
much.
It's not protecting.
No,
That's scary.
It's very scary. Even during Takat, one of the panelists had his phone stolen on Oxford Street, and on Oxford Street daily 200 phones get stolen,
That's
minimum, because
Wow.
they sell it, they make money, and the reason is because people are really struggling financially. You know, the money you get from the government, people think, oh, the government looks after you and they give you money. The money is barely enough to survive on. I get child benefit, so anyone who has a child gets child benefit, unless you earn above a certain threshold. I get like £95 a month.
What are you gonna do with that?
That's like the wet wipes.
Oh my God.
That covers the wet wipes and
Whoa.
maybe the nappies, and that's about it.
Wow.
Not even the nappies, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's really not as amazing as people think. But, you know, again, get the experience. Visit there. London is still my favorite city, you know.
Of course.
But I have to watch where I'm going. I have to hold my bag tight. I shouldn't come home too late.
Yeah.
Literally past 10 p.m., London's a different place.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can say that. I can say the same about Iraq, but like in a different way.
Yeah,
It
it's
becomes very
lively and
vibrant.
fun, and everyone's out
Yeah,
eating coffees.
Definitely. I mean, we talked about how Iraqis in the UK can bring back to their cultures, but what are the Iraqi skills that you've noticed working with Iraqis for such a long time now that could be used internationally? Like, I know Iraqis feel that they are not skilled enough, and there is an issue with employment here and with skills here.
Yeah.
But what is something that you think Iraqis have as, let's say, work ethic or skills that they can adapt internationally?
I think in general all skills are transferable, I think the only thing with working internationally, if you want to work remotely from Iraq for an international company, is just having digital prowess and being able to use different tools and learn different software depending on the needs of the company. I think Iraqis are unique in that, you know, there's a lot that this country has been through and that people have been through. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of managing very challenging circumstances that a normal person shouldn't have to go through. The fact that everyone's been through that and gone through the other end sets you up for anything. Like, you can literally do anything you want.
Resilience.
Yeah. I hate that word though, because I feel like
really?
it's so overused.
Okay.
Like, even with people in Gaza, like, they're so resilient. It's like, okay, but what?
Yeah, it loses its meaning.
It
right?
does.
Yeah.
But like, of course, you know, either you survive or you die. Like, there's no other option.
Yeah.
So is that resilience or is that just survival? You know, life. Like, I feel like the word resilience is this like very Western way of making brown people feel special. Like, I'm so resilient. And it's just like,
oh my God.
shut up.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you mean. I mean, you mentioned you've worked in Gaza, and I'm pretty interested in that. For how many years have you worked in Gaza?
So most of my work was remote. I paid a visit for 5 days.
How was it?
Very unique. Actually, funnily enough, when I moved to Erbil, I was like, this isn't that dissimilar to Gaza.
Wow.
Because there's a lot of empty buildings that, you know, are half built. Like, the shell is built, but nothing else, and there's cranes in the air. I remember that. In Gaza, we weren't allowed to go to the destroyed areas. So we had a very special view of like the sea, the hotels, restaurants on the ocean, and I did manage to convince my boss to let me visit the shrine of Rasulullah's grandfather, Hashim. I can't remember the full name, and that was in the old city, and that was actually next to the Christian church that was destroyed, the oldest Christian church in the region.
How did that feel?
I've been to the church and just hearing the news, like, I just can't believe they would do something like that. It's, you know, wiping out history, no regard for heritage. I don't care who's hiding in there. Sorry, like, it doesn't give you an excuse.
Yeah.
That was such a beautiful church, and the aura in that church was special. I don't even know if the shrine of Rasulullah's grandfather is still there. I haven't heard any news, and I need to ask around. But there's a lot of beauty in Gaza. The people are super lovely. I had kanafa, Arabiya, which
that's nice.
is meant to be like very staple in Gaza.
Yeah.
But I have to say, Nabulsi kanafa is better.
Oh, okay.
I did prefer Nabulsi kanafa.
Yeah.
But yeah, the food was amazing. The people were great. Walking through the old city, I had like these little kids being like, Ajnabiya, Ajnabiya.
Oh my God. But how did they know you're Ajnabi? You don't look.
I think I didn't have a hijab at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I think just my clothes and I think the way you walk as well. Like, if I go to Pakistan, they know I'm foreign. They know, but I don't have to open my mouth.
But why do you think?
I think it's something in the way we walk. That's my theory.
Maybe, yeah, I've heard about that, and I've heard like Americans as well. It's the way Americans speak. It's like they carry this national identity.
Yeah.
Do they instill that in schools, like in the UK? How do you think like people?
I think the US is better at it because it's the only identity they've got. They've got no history.
Okay.
Right. So for them, it's a fresh slate. And they were able to start from zero, and that is how they've brought the country together. So it's easy for them. For the UK, it's a bit more complicated. The UK has more history and heritage, and it's more multicultural. Like London, at least, obviously, is very multicultural. So people, if you're a Londoner, you're like your own beast compared to the rest of the UK.
Whoa.
Being a Londoner is very different to being someone from Liverpool or someone from Birmingham.
Would you describe it as having like more arrogance?
No, I think I guess maybe the Northerners would say that.
Okay.
Maybe everyone else in the UK would say we're arrogant. We kind of just live in our own bubble. Like, we don't know what's going on in other cities. All the funding, all the support, most of it comes to London. The building and the projects, So we're like on top of the world, and then all the other cities are like, you suck.
Oh my God.
Everything goes to London. We don't have fiber cables here.
Oh my God. Wow. That's like a source for hatred.
Yeah.
And for fights. That's really interesting. What kind of message would you have for like Iraqis, whether they're like in the UK or they're in Iraq and want to go out? I mean, we've talked about if they were in Iraq and if they want to go out, but like, what message do you have for Iraqis in the UK?
In the UK, I always encourage them to come and visit if they haven't recently, or if they have, but very briefly. Just spend 2 weeks just talking to people, and often they'll ask me, oh, where should I visit? And I mention, you know, the station and different places. I think it's, you know, do as much exploring as possible. We've been here for 2.5 weeks, and we've been in 6 cities.
Wow.
Erbil, Mosul, Suleimania, Najaf, Karbala, and Baghdad.
That is a lot of cities.
Yeah, and with a toddler, so you've got no excuse, guys.
Definitely. You know, there's a lot of places I didn't visit. It's like Mosul, I've never been there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So.
But, you know, I've never been to Scotland, so...
Okay. Yeah, that's... You've never been to Scotland?
No.
That is...
It's typical, right? The country you're in, you take it for granted. You
Definitely,
don't venture outside your city.
Yeah.
You think the world revolves around the capital city, so...
Yeah.
But it is on my bucket list, hopefully soon.
But there's something about like crowded cities is that I don't know, I've experienced this in Turkey where like literally the metro is like you have to push yourself into it because of the traffic and all the people.
Yeah.
But there's some sense of like actually not being important. Like I feel like I'm part of a massive global community and I'm just like a fraction. And it's a good and a bad thing, but like it's weird to me that in London someone would feel, you know, a sense of ownership to their country, whereas like there's so much diversity.
But I think what you said also applies to London, because it feels like everyone's in a rat race. You know,
that feeling
that
you commonly feel in cities.
Running to your meeting, running to work, running back from work. You're a bit of a robot, and that's what I was saying. I think the education system is also set up that way to just make you into these 9-to-5 robots, and that's one thing I really don't like, and another reason I want to escape myself.
Wow.
Like I'm not here living to work.
How do you combat that? How do you find the balance?
I think you kind of have to fight for it and look for the right jobs as well. I'm lucky. I work for a startup. I work 4 days a week, 2 of which are from home, 2 in the office. So it's really great for me as a mum because I need that flexibility. Definitely. And I don't want to compromise, you know, my family life for a job.
Yeah.
So people need to be a bit picky in that sense. Or sometimes I've seen people like fight with their employer to get work from home options because since COVID, a lot of employers just want everyone back in the office, and everyone is like, no.
Definitely, because they've seen everything work out very fine remotely, you know.
Yeah, but I don't know what's gone wrong with people's heads. Like all the bosses of the world just want you back in the office.
It's like the sense of like control, maybe,
or
like not just control, but having things structured as before.
Yeah. But also, you know, at the end of the day, like there's more to life than work. And that's really important for me, since especially being a mum, I'm not about to kill myself for anyone.
But is that like is that like a UK thing? Because I know in France, for example, they really value the work-life balance, and they don't think that their work, their life revolves around their work. Like, how is it in the UK?
I guess it depends as well on what sector you're in. Like the banking sector, people work crazy hours, and their life revolves around it. And then even in their spare time, they're doing social gatherings, all to kind of move up the corporate ladder. It's a very cutthroat environment in the banking sector, finance sector. But yeah, it really depends on which industry you're in.
Okay, that's really interesting. I am really happy I had this conversation. Thank you so much
for having me,
for coming today and having this conversation. It was really rich, and I can guarantee that there's a lot of people who are going to benefit from it.
I hope so. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.